The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Phixated Podcast. I am your host, Mike Azalina. I have officially entered my influencer era. Regz, thoughts on that?
I mean, for you, it sounds great. I think for me, I had to be convinced to download TikTok because you were putting TikToks out there for the podcast. I feel like I've always been an old soul, and TikTok is one of those things that my old soul felt very strongly like, why I should never be on that app ever.
Totally understand. I totally understand. It has not been on the top of my list of things to do, to create, to have, but it is out there, and it is one of the more popular platforms.
Seriously.
I don't know if it's going to last much longer, but one thing that I'm learning very quickly on here is it's a dark part of the internet. It's dark, man. It's dark. I'm finding that out really quickly.
It's a wild world out there.
I got a guy on here trying to tell me that no one calls with the Eagles run the brotherly shove.
Why? Who argues about this? Who argues about this stuff?
His exact quote, "I do applaud your efforts, but no one says brotherly shove." Tell me you don't watch football without telling me you don't watch football.
Cheers to you. Cheers to you, friend, whoever you are out there.
I won't say his name. That's rude. But I'm pretty sure that Tom Brady said it 3 times last during the game. Like, I'm pretty sure that's what happened. But this guy's not worth my.
Well, he didn't know that.
Time.
He was too busy being on TikTok.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's too busy calling the Philly fan base the most belligerent, rude, and obnoxious fan base on the planet. So, cheers to you, guys.
Yeah, that's right. Cheers to you, wherever you are out there.
While we enter our influencer era, there's a Philly athlete who's decided that it's his time to enter his influencer era. Over the last 2 weeks, Bryce Harper has become quite the TikTok enthusiast. We've gotten videos of Barista Bryce, videos of Bryce's travel bag.
Banana bread Bryce?
Banana bread Bryce is probably my favorite well, no, the bag was my favorite, but banana bread, classic. Him creating the ultimate lineup, him making coffee on vacation, and today jumping off the top of a coconut tree. Bryce, please don't do that ever again. But it has been a ride, man. Bryce is all over the place.
I just thought of this. I can't tell. It's such a weird juxtaposition for how he is during baseball season. Like, you could almost understand when he would, like we were talking about a few years ago, he had that like sort of Twitch run where he was streaming a bunch.
Yep.
And playing games. And you're just like, okay, I could see a guy like that doing something like that.
Yep.
This is almost up there with like if Zach Wheeler all of a sudden started putting stuff on TikTok and like was talking about where his favorite latte is. You just be like, these two things don't compute. These don't go together. And seeing him like with the weird, influencer smile and like talking through it, because all these things have a cadence, and a tone, which is one of the more cringy things about them. And you're just like, is that my 3-hole hitter and future Hall of Famer Bryce Harper doing this stuff and not some 11-year-old girl? And it's very weird,
but also fun at the same time.
Yeah, look, cool. If he enjoys it
cool.
more, he obviously goes through these stints where he's just like, I got to do something.
Yeah, for sure.
And he had the Twitch thing, and now it's TikTok, and next year it'll be like he'll be posting Instagram pictures of his garden. that he's putting together. You know, I get it. He's got to do something.
It's fun to see Bryce in this sort of way. It's definitely a different type of Bryce, like you said, than what we're used to, than the guy who's, ripping across the Philadelphia on the front of his jersey and all those things. We're fortunate to have the guy. It's fun to watch when he's this way, and I know he's a little awkward. Like it's someone said they can't watch him because it's awkward for them. I've been able to get past that. Like I just think Bryce isn't made to be an influencer.
Yeah, right.
But he's doing it for whatever reason.
I'm gonna be honest. I was good with the coffee one, and like the lineup one was good. The banana bread, I had to stop a little bit through. I was like, I can't do it. I can't do my 3-hole hitter making banana bread. That was apparently that was my TikTok wall.
Man of many talents.
That's the wall that I hit. Apparently, it's when when my baseball player makes banana bread, I have to cut it off.
Well, I can appreciate that. I respect it. I look forward to the garden.
I'm calling it now. Next year, that's what we're getting. We're getting a Bryce Instagram run, but he's a gardener now.
Look, it wouldn't surprise me at all. It feels like that's very much in Bryce's wheelhouse.
Yeah.
So
just
certainly
saying, you heard it here first.
Yep. We'll keep an eye on that. But it's interesting you mentioned gardens because the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles began his run of winning football when he talked about the flower that needed to grow and find the right soil and get the roots expounded, like the whole thing. And we were like, this guy, like, what is going on with this guy? Since then, 4 straight playoff appearances, 3 double-digit win seasons. What is he, like the 3rd winningest coach of all time? Highest winning percentage in Eagles history, highest winning percentage among head coaches that are 4 years in NFL, like all these things. And yet we still like want to kill him on a weekly basis. Like he still drives us nuts on a weekly basis with certain things that he does, that he says. And then we get the article this week. And I'm drawing a blank. Regz, who wrote it? It was an ESPN article.
Tim McManus?
Tim McManus, thank you. Yeah, so Tim McManus wrote an article about Nick Sirianni. It dropped kind of randomly yesterday. I don't think anybody knew it was coming. And it was, the headline basically tells you everything that you need to know about what it is. And it's simply that it's about the relationships that he builds, and that's what makes him an effective head coach. And we've heard that's one of his core values. Like that's one of the things he believes in from a head coach perspective. And I'll be honest with you, Regz, like one of the things that I believe in from a human being perspective, like, people will do things with you when they believe in that you believe in them and that you care about them. It's not that hard. The people that I've worked hardest for in my life are people that I really think buy into me as a person, as an athlete, as an employee, whatever it is. The people that I don't work as hard for are the people that I think see me as a number, or as a picture on a resume or whatever it is. And there were some really cool stories in this article about what Nick Sirianni does to build these relationships with these guys that make them want to win for him. And again, we've heard it from guys before. Like, we love Nick. We would do anything for Nick, but we've always thought it to be like player speak. And then I read this article, and I want you to go read the article if you're listening. Go look, it's free on ESPN, Tim McManus, Nick Sirianni article. I do believe that everybody who's an Eagle fan needs to read this. And I'm not trying to say you have to change your mind and love Nick. Nick has changed my mind little by little this year. There are still things that drive me nuts. I said that earlier. But this article really moved me further in Nick's direction. And there's a story specifically about Isaiah Rodgers. And, Nick apparently does this for all the players in key moments. But he writes them notes and leaves them in their lockers for them to find. Like notes about things he notices, notes celebrating them. And Regs, that resonated so much with me because I used to do that with teachers and support staff and students at the building. Like if I went into a classroom and I saw kids doing the right thing, I'd take a little post note, I'd write them a note, and I'd leave it on their desk when they left for the day. And then they'd find it the next morning. And I do that for teachers and I do it for support staff because there are easy ways to make people feel appreciated. And look, that's an NFL football player who's in his late 20s. And what does he do? He carries it, packs it with him for every game, and reads it before every game. Why? Because it shows that someone believes in him and it builds his confidence. It sounds ridiculous. Like I'm sure there are a lot of adults who are like, oh, do that for me. And you're lying. You're lying. Like that would do something for you because your human nature would force that on you. So I texted you today. You've got to read this article. I sent you the link. Curious to know your thoughts. Curious to know if anything jumped out at you from like just a human being perspective. But clearly, Nick's doing some things right from that CEO level to make these dudes want to play for him. And clearly, it's working. They lost 3 games this year.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest takeaway. I think from a human level, you connect with it however you do, but like even this with Lovato, the long snapper, like paying attention to some of his, family struggles and like not just talking about it once, but checking up on him constantly. And then Lovato, like wanting Nick to be one of the first people in the organization to know that like things worked out. And it's stuff like that. You don't listen. Is there going to be a story like this for every guy in that locker room? No. You're not going to, there's what, 40 guys, 50 guys in there. You're not going to connect this way with every single person. I think that's, that's okay. You're not supposed to. I think the biggest part about it was that Nick saw the value in this like CEO role. And, maybe he, in his own time felt a certain way about it, like when the offense went away from him and he wasn't calling plays and maybe he wasn't going to have that much of an influence, but for what it's worth, he got over it and dove into this, and it's clearly working. Like again, you can't forget last year. It happened. It's a thing. But the best people learn from those things. They don't dwell on them and hopefully they don't repeat it. And the way that he even said in the article that it's been great to have more time to sit in on like a defensive line meeting or something like that, where in the past he'd only be with quarterbacks and the offense.
Right.
And so he's able to connect with other guys and, hear more things about what they're trying to do or maybe what they're working on. And he's clearly good at following up with those things and making sure that players have what they need to be successful. And like you said, you're going to get more out of people when they know you have their back and they know you believe in them and you have a deep understanding that this person, if there is feedback, like comes from the right place, that it's not from any other place other than let's work together to get you in the best spot possible. And that's when you can coach, like quite honestly, that's when you can coach the best. That's when you can truly use your expertise to hopefully influence people and get them to where they want to be because you have something to offer them. And again, I don't think this story, every guy in that locker room is going to have the same story. Some guys might find it cheesy. Other guys might just not be into it. It's going to happen. But clearly there's enough buy-in from the leaders of that team that like, this is how we do things. If you got problems, keep it to yourself, talk about it at home with whoever you need to talk about it with, but don't bring it in here.
I also think like this sort of plays alongside of the Nick like press conferences. And he goes to such extreme lengths to protect these guys.
Mm-hmm.
like to the point where we've made fun of some of his answers on here ad nauseum. We've sat here and been like, that's a ridiculous answer.
Yeah.
And he knows it's a ridiculous answer. But he does it because it protects his players. And look, I think for the casual fan, maybe that doesn't compute all the time. I think we've known that Nick gets out in front for that reason. Sometimes I wish he would just give an answer and stop, instead of going on a 2-minute rant about whatever it is he's talking about.
Yeah, sure.
There is like some Belichickian that I wish he would have, but I'm also not opposed to taking the proverbial bullet for your guys, and Nick seems to be okay doing that. He's okay looking a little bit dumber by saying something that looks just ridiculous and sounds just ridiculous, because at the end of the day, it takes the attention away from his player, and now he's the focus of the conversation for the week. And there's something to be said for that. So maybe if they don't like the Post-it notes, they appreciate that their head coach is willing to stand up there and be like, hit me with it. Now, look, there are times where it's like it feels like every time something went wrong with play calling this year, or they blew something up on the field, I called that play. I was the one that at some point, Nick,
right. We all know what's going on here.
Yeah, you can't call every play that's wrong. At some point, you got to be right, and I think, but that goes a long way with people, and he does a lot of weird things, but for some reason, this team continues to win. And I know there's someone listening to this. Well, where was all this lovey-dovey relationship crap last year? I think there was a lot more going on last year than what we knew. Like, the more I see the Son Reddick stuff happening out there right now, the more I wonder how much his unhappiness was just permeating around that locker room. Like, he became useless down the stretch last year. Useless. Because of that contract. And you wonder how much of it he was wasn't he a captain? I have to look back. I feel like he was named a captain.
I don't remember either. I'd have to look. I have to look. I'm with you. I think that stuff could have been going on, but when you can't translate it to on-field stuff, they were in such a bad way from a coaching standpoint with those coordinators, and obviously the position coaches, like just from top to bottom, there was no way to fix anything.
Right.
And so, you can do this stuff, but when guys are like, well, like, I'm going to my meetings and like, I'm not prepared to go out there this week, and I have to put my body on the line, and when none of us are on the same page about how this should go, I can see how that can be tough.
Yeah, for sure. It's not easy when
the notes aren't going to mean so much when the guys are going out there.
No,
when they're trying to survive, and they're looking around like, oh, you have no idea what you're doing. Okay, good. Me neither.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think the Nick conversation will continue. Win or lose this week. I will say this. I don't think this is very bold at this point, but I really don't believe Nick's going anywhere after this year. I don't think there's anything that could happen that would keep them from bringing him back next year. Obviously, we don't know that for sure. I'm speaking solely from opinion basis, but I can't imagine he's going anywhere. We didn't talk about this before the show as we were planning, but while we're talking about maybe coaching departures, I really hate that Kellen Moore's interviewing this week.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate that they're able to do that. I wish the NFL would put some sort of
the timing of this has to be different.
You just it's like we talked about with the portal in college football. This idea that you've got dudes that are preparing their teams for a major playoff game. Like you're 2 wins away from being in a Super Bowl, and our offensive coordinator is interviewing for 3 jobs between now and the game on Sunday.
You're not getting the best interview out of him, and something's going to take away from his game planning. I feel like there's no winner on either side.
No. No, because if these teams interview like the Eagles, it's an all-day affair.
Right.
Like the Eagles head coaching interviews are truly an all-day affair. So I don't know if other teams do it the same way. Jeffrey Lurie's got a very specific way that he hires a head coach.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we're going to be, when people are listening to this, 2 days away from an NFC divisional game. And he's got an interview with Jacksonville, I think, tomorrow, like Friday, and then Saturday with somebody else. And I maybe the Cowboys are after the divisional round. But still, that's got to be weighing on his mind.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously saying the politically correct things, but it's really annoying
Yeah.
that it's happening. Again, I'm not mad that he's getting the opportunities. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not upset about that. I just don't like that he's interviewing during a prep week for arguably their third biggest game of the year. To this point, the biggest game of the year.
Everyone should be solely focused on this game.
Yeah. I'm also selfishly annoyed that like Jalen's gonna have his sixth offensive coordinator in years, or fifth offensive coordinator in 6 years.
We gotta figure out how somebody can stick around for just a little bit.
Really obnoxious. Like this doesn't happen to Joe Burrow. It doesn't happen to Josh Allen. It doesn't, you know what I mean? Like every year these guys are leaving. He's only had Shane Steichen for 2 years, and that was his best year. I mean, this year's been fine. You know, he's not putting up huge numbers, but like they've also been winning pretty much every game by the world at the end of the game. Like,
yeah, and they're also
had
like
to throw the ball.
They're relying on a run game to close out games. They're not relying on Jalen and the passing game to.
Yeah, well, when you're up, you know, double digits in the fourth quarter, you're putting the game on ice with Saquon.
Mm-hmm.
I said this in the video today, and we're gonna get into this in a little bit. I do believe that if they need to throw to win on Sunday, he can. He can. I don't know if he can out throw Matthew Stafford, but he can throw to keep him in a game. Some of that's going to be weather pending. I don't know that they're going to have to throw the ball. I don't know that they're going to want to throw.
Yeah.
But we'll see. And we're going to wrap our coaching talk here because Nick Sirianni's facing who I believe to be one of the better head coaches standing in the final 8. When I look around the rest of the NFC, Dan Quinn's done a great job as a motivator in Washington this year. Do I think he's a better coach than Sean McVay? I don't. From an X's and O's perspective, I don't think he's a better head coach.
Yeah.
I think McVay is probably out of the 4 remaining NFC coaches, the best X and O head coach. If I look across the way into the AFC, I think he's outside of Andy Reid, the best X's and O head coach left in the whole thing. I think Harbaugh's a good coach. I think D'Amico's a good leader. I believe I'm drawing a blank on the other team that I'm missing over there, but I do think that when it comes to X's and O's, pure X's and O's, aside from Andy Reid, I don't know that there's a better head coach left in the field than Sean McVay. And you've got him paired with a Hall of Fame quarterback. They've won a Super Bowl together. This is not, I know it's a 6.5 point spread, and I still feel pretty confident, but this is not the game that I think a lot of people in this fan base think it's going to be. This is not the November game again. This is different. You know, this is Sean McVay in the postseason. This is Matthew Stafford, one of the toughest one of the most respected guys in the NFL. Like, if you go into that Eagles locker room and say, what your thoughts on Matthew Stafford, you're going to hear the word dog a lot because that dude is as tough as it gets. We play with a broken collarbone the 1 year, like won a game with a broken collarbone.
Yeah.
Like, he is just tough, and the arm talent is insane.
Yeah. Still good even at this age.
Yeah. So when you look at this game from a head coach perspective, I do love what Nick's been able to do. But McVay is McVay. And I don't see him cowering in this game at any point. I think, you know, what they've done offensively over the last few weeks has been really impressive. They torched that Minnesota team, torched them. And that offense just looked unstoppable. I don't know that I was much of a believer in Minnesota. I think I show many times, but they still won 14 games.
Yeah.
And they got taken to the woodshed this week.
Yeah.
So we are going to talk about the Rams offense versus the Birds defense here, but before I do, I didn't know if you had anything to add on McVay.
No, I think luckily we seem to have a little bit of McVay kryptonite with Vic Fangio, which is a good thing. But
yeah, at some point you just don't want to run out yet.
No, I'm with you. But I think if there was ever a really tough game to lose Nakobe Dean, it's this one. McVay is going to scheme the crap out of putting. Oh God, they're going to put him in such a whirlwind. He's going to think he's in a washing machine. Or Oren Burks. They're just going to scheme up a bunch of stuff to have him second guessing himself. I get it. You still have all the other guys out there. I get it.
Yeah.
But we've seen Matthew Stafford needs this much.
Oh yeah.
To let a ball go.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've got a guy who's in there kind of, maybe not sure or taking a half second more to react to something than Nakobe would, it could be tough. It could be. I think luckily the fact that this is a home game in Philadelphia is a huge advantage to the Eagles. I'm sure we'll get more into that, but I saw a tweet about Stafford's record in sub-freezing temperature and outside is 1-7 or something like that in the playoffs.
Since he's gone to LA.
Yeah, since he's gone to LA.
Yeah.
But look, there's always some of these teams that make a run, man, for whatever reason, and this team has a better motivation than most with what's been going on out there.
They do. Yep.
And look, we watched it with the Phillies in 22. All you need is the belief that you can keep doing this. I mean, again, maybe it runs out, maybe it doesn't, but there's that team that just.
Yep. Let's jump in here because we got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about those uncontrollables, the elements, stuff as we go. But I do want to start with the X's and O's stuff. And I forget what analyst says it, X's and O's and Jimmy's and Joe's. So I want to talk about all that stuff here. Want to start with the Rams offense. Obviously, we've already highlighted future Hall of Famer at quarterback. Matthew Stafford is unbelievable. He is truly one of a kind to watch. Dude is just a winner, plain and simple.
Mm-hmm.
You move into that backfield. Kyron Williams he runs heavy. He doesn't look like it. He's a small dude. Had the pleasure of watching him at Notre Dame, but he's a tough runner. And when you think back to that November game, he got off to a start. Then he fumbled on that drive, and that sort of stalled him for the night for some reason. He wasn't able to really get back at it again. From a receiver standpoint, two of the better ones that you're going to see, Puka Nacua is fantastic. Cooper Kupp, not the same guy, but still, on third downs and in the red zone.
I mean, I think very comparable to kind of that Adam Thielen that Carolina had. Maybe not as wily, but a guy who's been around a while and been a top talent for quite a few years. Did a pretty
good job.
He did. You're right.
Did a pretty good job on him in November.
I don't think he loses. I don't think DeJean loses as much as the physical battle. I think Thielen was just a little stronger, a little bigger, and kind of use that leverage to his advantage. I think Kupp's a little more of a route runner, not quite as big as Thielen. So I think you're right. I think luckily, I think he does match up a little better with Kupp from that perspective.
I also I think back to that game in November, and it's hard, man, because you can't take November and say it's going to go the same way, but they were able to get to Stafford 5 times. BG had 2 of those, I believe. Obviously he will not be on the field in this game, but Nolan Smith, since BG has gone out, has turned on an entirely different level. And I do think that is one of the matchups to sort of watch this week is Nolan Smith. He was so good against the Packers. See if he can continue that. I also wonder, because Milton Williams had a pretty nice game against them in November, and I wonder in passing situations, Moro Ojima also had a nice game that week. If they're going to be as willing to double Jalen Carter.
Yeah.
Now look, if I'm Sean McVay, I'm still looking at the Eagles defensive line and saying, I'm not letting 98 beat me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's sort of like the Eagles did with Aaron Donald all those years against the Rams. We're not letting 99 beat us, right? Like that was the plan. Jason Kelsey used to say to Aaron Donald all the time, I'm going to be here all night.
Yeah.
I'm not leaving you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the plan with Jalen Carter. And I do like the Eagles one-on-ones. If that's the case, I think that they have enough talent up front. I can't believe I'm saying this, to win those one-on-ones. Now, as you think about the outside, I trust Quinyon on whoever is not Puka Nacua, because Cooper Kupp's mostly going to be in the slot. Here's the thing about the Puka matchup. Now, Puka moves around quite a bit. They don't keep him in one spot. But for the most part, you're going to see Darius over top of him.
Yeah.
Remember, Slay didn't even get 20 snaps in that game because he got concussed in the first quarter. So he left that game. Puka went off. I am curious just to see what it looks like. Slay's playing at a high level right now. So just sort of that idea of maybe they can keep Puka at, just in somewhat of a check. I'm not saying he's not going to get his. He's still going to get his. But remember, there was that big pass interference down the seam to him because Isaiah Rodgers was right in his grill. It was a crap call, but he was right in his grill. Here's the part that concerns me. It goes back to, your point earlier. Tyler Higbee is going to play in this game, apparently. I don't know how. He was coughing up blood.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me. That's usually at least 2 weeks if you're coughing up blood. But sounds like he's playing. And they used him a lot in this Minnesota game. Zach Baun's going to be in the middle of the field. He's got the green dot, so he's going to be in the middle of the field. I think what you're going to see is more of that roaming job for whoever it is, whether it's Burks or we did get the hint that it could be Trot Jr.
Yeah.
Vic was not, he did not close that door on the chance for Axeman Jr. to get some rep. But they're going to be more the sideline, run fit, fifth man on the line type of action. I don't know how I feel. I think that you're right. He's going to have that guy circled. He's got 42 circled or 54 circled whenever they're on the field. So it's really important that these guys know where they're lined up, what their roles are. I'd rather them be late on the run fit than early and get these chunk plays in the middle of the field.
Yeah.
I'd rather them come up a split second late on a Kyron run because maybe he slows with Jalen Carter's big bear paw or Jordan Davis eating up a space.
Yeah.
And you're able to recover and it's 2-yard gain versus a play action that ends up 22 yards down the field. That's sort of what my thoughts are. I think it's better to be a little bit slower to react to the run than it is to the play action and get sucked in. I do think we are going to see more Trot Jr. than any of us anticipated. I also believe that there's a chance he is a good blitzer. And that's what Nakobe did well.
Yeah.
And can you imagine Trot Jr. sacking Matthew Stafford and throwing the axe on Sunday at the Link?
That's what we'd all kind of been waiting for.
But in a playoff game,
that's what I mean. It just ramps it up that much more.
That place will absolutely explode if that happens. So from a Vic Fangio perspective, I don't think there's really any second guessing like why he's staying late at the office. It's how am I scheming up this defense to not become vulnerable where one of my best players used to be.
Yeah.
Because I don't have Nakobe.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I scheme it up that we're not falling apart in the middle of the field?
Right.
Now, I look, there's no team in the league that doesn't have a drop off from linebacker 2 to linebacker 3. We're very fortunate to have two guys in the top 10 at that position.
Yeah.
And now, we're there's a drop off. I think it could be a lot worse than Oren Burks or Jeremiah Trotter Jr.
Oh.
Just think about who they signed to the practice squad.
We've seen. Yeah.
Yeah. Not that it's gonna be perfect, not that it's gonna be great, but the other 10 are still very good out.
Yeah.
If you're Sean McVay, what are you staying late game planning around?
I mean, I think, like you said, I think it's Jalen Carter. I think it's the fact that Nolan Smith has improved. I think that Milton Williams is playing really well right now. And I think, look, even from the defensive back end perspective, I think this secondary is playing better than they were in November.
Yeah.
The same way you can give the Rams sort of defensive line and defense as a whole credit for playing better since November.
Right.
I think, our defense has been playing better also.
Right.
They've done enough to become the number one defense in the NFL since that time. So I think he's staying up late, looking at all the ways that he can exploit any weakness that he's found.
Yeah.
Or that he's seen on film. I think that's what he's doing. He's just up trying to figure out where's any little gap and how can we exploit it.
Yeah, there's a little bit of added pressure to that because there's the narrative of, he came out and said that Vic Fangio is the hardest guy to game plan.
Mm-hmm.
And this defense is better now than it was. Yeah, they've given up big points. It's funny because I've seen a lot of people come out and say, well, this game was a lot closer than what it appeared to be in the score box, like in the box score. And I'm like, I disagree a lot. Like I saw one guy say, well, if it weren't 270-yard runs from Saquon, well,
yeah, what does that even mean?
What does that even mean? He ran two big plays because you couldn't with a loaded box.
Right.
I'd argue, a really questionable pass interference got you 7 points.
Right.
So the conversation can be had both ways. This is a really good offense that is coming for the Rams. They do a lot of motion stuff. There's a lot of double moves. There's a lot of middle of the field. They get themselves in creases behind guys.
Mm-hmm.
So this zone defense that Vic runs is going to be tested. They're going to be tested this week. And look, they've played together a lot more since we played them because they did have a lot of injuries. And they've gotten a lot more reps. Now, I don't buy into that quite as much because these guys have played together. This is not their first year together.
Right.
They've played together, for 2 years. Puka's a second-year player. That's hard to believe. But this is not going to be easy. This is going to be a difficult. I still think the Eagles are the more talented team, but sometimes it comes down to the guy taking the snaps, and the dude doing it for the Rams is darn good.
Yeah.
So, we'll talk about the keys, but I think it's really can the rest of this defense, next man up, pick up the slack of missing such a key component to its defense.
Yeah.
Like Nakobe Dean.
Yeah.
Let's flip sides and talk about the Eagles offense against this Rams defense. We know they put up 37. Jalen had 170 some yards passing in that game. 110 of those went to AJ. They did not have Devontae Smith in that game.
Yeah.
It was Jordan Mailata's first game back after the hamstring stuff. And Dallas Goedert did play. I thought he did not. He did play in that game. But they did not have Devontae Smith. It was AJ Brown at 110 yards receiving. I think Dotson had
Yeah.
one catch for 4
Yeah.
yards.
Mhm.
Saquon had like a big screen that went
Mhm.
for a big gain, and I think Dallas had like 4 catches.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I mean, they ran the ball for 300 yards.
Right.
Look, couple of things to note. They're clearly going to stack the box.
Yeah.
That doesn't scare me a whole lot because one-on-one on the outside, the Eagles pound for pound have a major advantage over the Rams corners. Just plain and simple. AJ Brown 8 last time, and they didn't even have Devontae to worry about.
Yeah. Right.
So if they need to throw the ball, they'll be able to do it. And they still loaded the box in November, but they couldn't stop them because the Eagles are stronger up front. They're stronger.
Right.
With Dallas Goedert lining up as another blocker, having that 6th guy there, truly what that means at that point. And if you have Calcaterra, but what that means at that point, if you're putting 8 in the box and the Eagles are lining up 7, basically on the line of scrimmage, all Saquon has to do is beat one guy.
Yeah.
He's got to beat one guy.
Right.
That's it. That's it. If he beats one guy, he's gone. So load the box. You did it in November. And for the Eagles, it is simply you've got to run the ball. Because if you get into 3rd and longs trying to throw the ball, this is a very scary pass rush. That Fisky kid is good. The edge rusher that we kind of laughed at them for taking back in April because we were like, oh my gosh, we're gonna get a corner now, right? But I talked about him in the video today. Who's 4th in the league in pressures. Verse is a really good player.
Mm-hmm.
So going into this game, if you're in 3rd and longs, and look, I trust the Eagles offensive line. Like they're going to play in isolation. Like they are absolutely going to let those guys sit on their edges.
Yeah.
But the Eagles did struggle in the interior against the Packers. And that's where that Fisky plays. So I don't know that I trust the interior offense right now as I do Jordan Mailata on an island against Verse. But your sort of thoughts on this offense, and obviously running the ball is key, but anything else that you want to add?
No, I think it's been I think Shield brought it up on one of the Philly special podcasts. He brought up that yes, the passing offense has been bad, but also the last the past few games, the run offense hasn't been at its best.
Right.
Like it's had some of its worst sort of EPA per drive game or EPA per play games.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, I think he said 5 games. And I think it obviously it has been because teams have been stacking the box. They have been keying in on, we are not letting Saquon Barkley beat us. And if it is the temperature it is, and maybe some weather that we're looking at, it might be harder to pass the ball in this situation. I'm not saying that the Eagles have to get away from the run by any means, because I really do think it's going to be one of the keys to them winning, just like we talked about against the Packers. But if anything, an NFL defensive coordinator is going to be like, they rushed for 277 yards against us. We're not going to let that happen again. We're not going to let that same thing happen. So it might have to be, and again, I'm just projecting, but in my mind, it might have to be one of those games where the first drive or two doesn't feature a lot of Saquon. I'm not saying you still can't run the ball, because you have to. You have to still do it, see what formations they're getting into, or if you're at the line and Jalen sees them in a favorable, formation for the run, maybe he checks into it, something like that.
Right.
So I'm not saying to never give him the ball in the first few drives, but I think we really need to see if this offense with, like you said, with all their guys healthy, can come out and force a team to get out of that heavy box, force them to have to play too high safety. Like you saw what AJ did essentially by himself in that game earlier this year. I wonder if this is one of those games where if they come out and they complete 5, 6, 7 passes in their first drive and a half, that the Rams just are kind of like, shit, we got to do something. We can't just stay here. The Eagles are like, they're too talented. They're too talented. If they're, if the passing game can get going a little bit. And I know that's like, there's probably fans out there listening, like, have you not seen our passing offense for the past few weeks?
Yeah.
And look, I get it. I'm not dismissing it. I am not even saying that I haven't had all the same thoughts that you're having. But we did see against Green Bay, like, it was really hard for Saquon. Not that he didn't have it like a couple plays where he, was like one missed tackle away from really breaking a few.
Yeah.
But it was not an easy day, even for that offensive line. It just wasn't easy. They were throwing more guys than you have guys to block. That's how it goes. And I just wonder if I'm hopeful that maybe this offensive unit can scheme up some quick throws, getting the ball in their hands. I think, again, the Rams defense was like one of the worst defenses against yards after catch. And the Eagles are really good at it with who they have.
AJ's so hard to get down.
Yeah, exactly. And you just wonder, like, let's try. Are there any ways to just get the ball in those guys' hands a handful of times and be successful at it? Like, they're going to have to adjust. They're going to have to. They're not just going to let A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, like, rack up 200 yards each. They're just not.
Right. I think you're right. I do see a world where that happens. I believe that happens. They're going to run the ball to start the game. They're absolutely going to do it.
Again, yeah.
They're going to do it because they want to assert that they can.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that on the first possession. And look, I'll be honest with you, it drives me nuts when Saquon doesn't get a touch on the first possession.
Yeah, no, I've been right there with you.
It's happened a bunch of times. So I certainly don't want that to happen. Like I don't want it to happen that if he breaks the first run of the game for 12 yards, that we drop back the next 3 plays.
Right. That's happened. So, that's happened a few times too.
It absolutely has. I totally get it. But if it is working on the first possession and you're able to get down there and score, then and you get a stop, then on the second possession, then say, all right, we're going to take some shots in the air through the air right now.
Yeah.
And look, if you come out and they're in a heavy box and you gain like 2 yards on first down and you line up again and they're in a heavy box and Jalen checks something, fine. I'm good with it. But I don't want to. Part of what my argument to people after last week was simply just the idea of like, what do you prefer? That the pass game works or that you win the game? And there's really like the only right answer is that you win the game. And not that they can't throw on this team, because they can. They 1000% can. They showed it last game without Devontae. Like AJ just did whatever he wanted. But they're going to come into this game and say we're going to try and win on the ground. And it might be that type of weather game. It's funny. This is probably a good transition to the uncontrollables of this game.
Yeah.
I think we've kind of hit our high notes on everything else across the board, but the weather at this point is so funny because it's like up in the air. It's truly a 50-50.
Yeah. Like
it's going to be cold. There's no doubt about that. The real feel is going to be somewhere in the 20s. So it's going to be cold, but the precipitation could fall south of Philly and they might miss the snow altogether. There's potential of 1 to 3 inches of snow. which would be so much fun. That would
Yeah,
just be
yeah.
so much fun. Watching Saquon Barkley in a snow game would be a blast. Will it happen? I don't know. We're not meteorologists, and even meteorologists are wrong a lot of the time. So we don't know if it's going to snow. I will say that a team who's played 14 of their games in a dome this year, 15 of their games in a dome this year, is probably not going to enjoy 20-degree weather. And the Eagles are practicing outside right now.
Yeah.
They were practicing outside at the link today. And I gotta be real. And I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not here to say it is. But if you're a team who's flying across country and it's this kind of weather when you're used to the weather out there, you've got a million other things on your mind, right? And you get punched in the mouth early. Getting blocked, trying to tackle Saquon Barkley in this weather doesn't feel good. Trying to tackle Jalen Hurts in this weather doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Trying to tackle A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert in this weather, being blocked by Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson doesn't feel good. Their best defensive player played his whole college career in Florida and then went right to L.A. There's a world. This is the only time I'm saying this. There's a world where if the Eagles can find an early lead, that defense might quit.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to be fun. It's just not going to be fun trying to play in that weather. Snow or not, like it's still going to be cold as hell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's not going to feel good out there.
Yeah.
If there's a chance of snow, that means it's going to be cold.
Mm-hmm.
So the elements will matter in this game.
Yeah.
They're absolutely going to matter. A couple of the other uncontrollables, obviously, our hearts go out to everybody in LA. I'm dealing with whatever they're dealing with. It is insanely sad what is happening and what has happened. That's got to be weighing on these guys quite a bit. And they went back to LA after the Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
So they flew back for like 2 days to fly across the country again. And that flight from Arizona, I believe, is 2 hours to LA. It might be an hour and a half, but I've done that before, and I'm pretty sure it's 2.
Yeah.
And now you got to fly 6 across the country. It's just on a short week. Let's not forget that.
Right.
Like they played on Monday, went back Tuesday, flying out here on Thursday or Friday. It's a short week. Those are some uncontrollables that do give the Eagles a little bit of advantage. Between the weather, the issues at home, short week, and the travel, all of that plays into the Eagles' hands quite a bit. And I think that's part of the spread, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
But those are, I don't know if there are any other uncontrollables that I missed, but those seem to be the main one.
No, I think for sure. I'm really curious how the weather is going to affect Stafford and the Rams offense.
Yeah, I mean, even when he was in Detroit, he played in a dome stadium.
Yep.
So it's always sort of been his his thing that he's played in a dome. And again, I do believe he is one of the more talented quarterbacks in the world.
Yeah.
I 100%. I'm 100% in on that.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a different. And look, we keep saying outdoor. We keep saying, it's outdoor. But just Philadelphia on its own is a bear to play in. Like you're going to the sidelines and hearing things that you don't think, like actually words that don't actually go together being put together. You're hearing boos, you're hearing curses, you're hearing all of these things. It is loud. It is crazy. It's not easy to play in that stadium on a September day. Now you're trying to play here in January. It's not going to be fun. It's simply not going to be fun. So I am also curious about that. The only reason why I like won't sell out on it, like if this were Sam Darnold, I'd be picking the Eagles by 3 scores.
Yeah.
I am so scared of Matthew Stafford.
I'm with you. He still has the ability. I again, there's no doubt about it. Again, that's why I'm curious. I don't want to believe it because I'm not going to put myself in that situation. I'm not going to put
Right.
myself in believing it all the way, even though people have these stats and Twitter and all,
Yeah.
whatever I might see about it, I'm not jumping in that basket.
Say what you want about Philly fans. We know a dog when we see a dog.
Yeah.
Like you're not finding Stafford hate anywhere. Like we're all on our heels with Matthew Stafford.
Mm-hmm.
He's not the reason why I think that the Rams lose this game. Like if the Rams lose this game, there's a lot of the weather stuff that I think plays into it, but it's not because of Stafford.
Yeah.
One other thing that I want to mention here in the uncontrollable department, but partially controllable. The officials in this game, or the officials in the second Commanders game.
Oh my God, the ones that threw out CJ? God almighty.
So that's the official crew that this game has. So from an uncontrollable perspective, and I don't know how true this is. I'd have to look, but the head officials grew up 15 minutes from Detroit or whatever. CJ has to keep his mouth shut. Has to.
Which by all accounts, he's been fine over the past
it's
couple
amazing.
games.
It's amazing. We played 17 games and he's only gotten ejected in one.
Right.
Isn't that crazy?
For not even touching anybody, just for talking.
Like I will never get over that.
No one's shown me a statistic, but it has to be out there. Who's ever been thrown out of a game for just talking?
Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. That's it.
I mean, it can't be many.
It's CJGJ.
I still don't know how it's possible.
I still can't believe that I had a person try and convince me that he just looked like he was more over the top than necessary.
What does that even mean?
I will never, in my head, I can't get over that was an argument.
Yeah, right.
These dudes say stuff to each other every week.
Oh my God. It's every second of every game. Like
Vinny Curry's thought on it was he must have literally threatened to commit murder on someone in that dude's family.
Right.
Like he must have legitimately threatened to kill him. That's the only way. He's like, and even then, I don't know how you throw the flag on him, but not on the guy who punched him.
Yeah, right. His helmet's off his head. And the referee's just like, nope, that's your fault. And you're like, what?
Just to this day, cannot get over that play.
Excuse me?
So that is the official. He will hear it from the Philly faithful every time he makes a call. But if we thought we got a little bit of the short end of the stick in LA, I can imagine we're probably going to get a few of those here this weekend. So be ready for that. All right, buddy. Time for some keys and predictions.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, listen, the keys for me are to give the keys to Saquon. I heard you, I hear you, I understand it, but until they show they can stop it, he needs to be driving the car. If they show that box is going to stop him, fine. But they loaded that box in November and he ran through it twice for 70. If there's ever a time to break a run, it's when they load a box, because all it takes is one dude to miss.
Yep.
And 26 is to the house. That's it. And he did it twice against them in loaded boxes. To me, it's simple. Give the keys to the car to Saquon. If they stop them, then use those guys on the outside. That's it for me. Just let Saquon win this game for you. And then you get to go play in a dome, and it might have to be a shootout there.
Yeah. I was picking between one or two, but I'm going to go with this one. I think it's the Eagles' offensive line stopping this Rams defensive line, which has proven to be very good. Yes. I know they're young, but they're very good.
Yeah.
And they had it then. And this offensive line dominated in LA in November. They have to do it again. I think with where Jalen's at, still trying to get comfortable coming back. Like you just said, if we need Saquon to dominate, we need this offensive line to dominate.
Yeah.
I think this O-line has to dominate this game. And if they do, I don't think it's very close, to be quite honest. I think if they dominate, I don't think it's going to be very close, because I don't think the Rams are going to have too many chances to score, because we're just going to be eating clock constantly.
All right. We've gotten to it. It's time for predictions. Regz, I got the Eagles 27-17 in this one. I put 2 field goals in there. I don't know about those. The weather could absolutely play a factor. Winds are like 10 to 15 miles an hour, so it's not,
Yeah, right.
We're not dealing with the most ridiculous of winds. And some of that depends on gusts, consistency, all of that. But I think 27-17. I think Saquon gets in twice. I think Jalen gets in once on a brotherly shove. Yes, that's what we call it. And I don't know that it feels like a 10-point game. I don't know. I don't have a vibe for how this game's gonna go. But I think we're gonna go to the NFC title game, whether that be we welcome in the Commanders or we head to Detroit. One way or the other, we're playing for a chance at a Super Bowl.
I'm going with 24-17. And I think the 17 comes on, it's 24-10, and maybe they get a late touchdown. And, we recover maybe, a last second onside kick, and just kind of that's it. So I think the score will be closer than the game, if that's what I can say. I have more faith in the Eagles' offensive line as one of the best units in football from start to finish than this little kind of run that the Rams are going on, that this defense has been on. And that's what I think wins them the game.
Yeah, so a quick fixated here before we sign off. I just want to make sure that all these national analysts keep this energy if the Eagles win. Because, my gosh, I've never in my life seen a group of humans roll so quickly to the other side of the field as they have after last week. I understand what the Rams looked like on. Well, I watched the game, and I understand what the Eagles looked like on Sunday afternoon. I watched the game. I know. But we're acting like this Eagles team has the exact same scenario and background as the Sam Darnold led Viking. We are 2 years removed from Jalen Hurts having 500 total yards in a Super Bowl, going shot for shot with who everybody on those same stages considers to be the GOAT. And they're just well, he's not good anymore. No, that Jalen said it in his press conference today, yesterday, today, whatever it was. When did winning not become the main reason for getting out there? We're able to win by running the football. And honestly, I'm okay hearing that from my quarterback, because it means that all he cares about is winning. He doesn't care about his own numbers, what people think of him. He just wants to win games. And I echo that. When did winning not become what matters? Why when I turn Get Up or First Take or whatever show Chase Daniels on, what a moron that guy is. Why is it always about well, Jalen Hurts he can't carry a team to win? They're winning every week. They won 14 games. They were 12-1 after their bye week. And guess what? The only game they lost was a game the guy you're criticizing got knocked out of in the second freaking drive. So keep the energy. I don't want you back if they win this weekend. When they win this weekend, stay on that side. Pick the Lions or the Commanders. But don't come back. Don't come back with all your, oh, well, the Eagles are just really good. I don't know. I don't pick them to win the Super Bowl. Because all week, all I've seen is that they can't win because Jalen doesn't throw the ball. And an add-on, if he does throw the ball and they win, then don't even get on the air on Monday because I'm just going to be tweeting at you all day. All of you. Starting with you, Dan Orlovsky, who I actually like, but he's been the worst off of Chase Daniel. Actually, he defended Jalen. That's not fair.
He did defend Jalen. He was more critical of Kellen Moore and the scheme than he was of Jalen.
I take that back, Dan. I apologize.
But
I'm fired up.
I'd like for once for it to be a good quarterback. That criticism gets national accord. Chase Daniel.
Yeah.
This guy was a perennial backup.
Yeah.
For his entire career, and now just because he has a platform on Fox Sports, like we got to take his word for gospel. Like, dude, you weren't even good at this job.
You know what the best? Yeah, guy carried a clipboard and made a ton of.
That's what listen. More power to you, but like, why should we take your opinion so seriously?
He's a good friend of Carson Wentz, so there might be something there.
Like, do you want to replace Jalen Hurts with peak Chase Daniel? Like, is that what we're talking about?
I saw someone say this, and this is where I put my. If you watch the game on Sunday, Tom Brady didn't have negative things to say. Tom Brady didn't have anything negative to say about Jalen. I'll be honest with you. I trust Tom Brady's, quarterback instincts a little bit more than I trust. Also, I don't know if it was Get Up or First Take, but Teddy Bruschi, who's like a 4-time Super Bowl, 5-time Super Bowl winner, probably probably going to be in the Hall of Fame one day, sat there on that set and said, well, I don't know what y'all are talking about because, like, when the Eagles have to throw the ball, they throw the ball. Like, did anybody watch the Steelers game? Like, did no one else watch what they did to the Steelers? They decided they were going to throw it, and they threw it. So, like, I don't know what everybody's talking about. Like, he just sat there kind of looking around like, what is wrong with all that? Like, and those are two guys and it's not because they're saying what I want to hear. Because I don't need that. Like, I just need people who are, like, I take back what I said about Dan. Because Dan on Monday was very much about, but, like, I forget who the dude who was like, Chase Daniel on Twitter was like, saying to him, Dan, come on. And someone else on the show, I don't know, Stephen A. Smith probably, was like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you watching? But, like, I don't need you to tell me what I want to hear. I need you to be, like, realistically honest, and not trying to get, like, clicks because that's what Chase is doing at this point.
Oh, for sure.
He knows that we're going to react, which is why I don't like retweet what he says.
Right.
Because I don't want him to get the tweets and the clicks and the likes. And
that's
whatever.
all he's doing.
Because that's what he's doing. He knows the fan base is.
Mm-hmm.
It's unequivocally false what he's saying.
Yeah.
And someone today, was it Colin Cowherd or one of the other jabronis on one of those shows, ranked Jalen as the 8th best quarterback of the 8 left.
Great.
He's like, there's like 5 of those dudes who haven't been to a championship game, but he's the 8th guy. Just motivate him more.
Yep.
That's all. Motivate him more and keep that energy. I don't want you back next week. I don't want you back next week. Wait, it doesn't matter because if it's the Lions, everybody.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Listen, we will be. We got to talk about it because if they win, I'm gonna want to watch that Sunday game with the Ravens and the Bills. That's gonna be a fun game to watch. So we might be jumping on. Well, Monday's the next.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about it. We'll find a time. We'll find a way.
Yeah.
To get on here and just quickly debrief. If they lose, we're gonna be on here because we're. And I'm not going to be in the mood to watch another. But if they win, we'll be here one way or the other. Until then, go ahead and make sure you click subscribe on the YouTube channel below. Head on over to where you get your podcasts, and like, subscribe, rate, do all the things. And then jump on to social media, on Twitter, at the Phixated Pod, at the Mic Drop 5, at Big Regz with a Z, on the Facebook, at the Phixated fan page. I'm taking all of our videos reaction as well, and then at the Phixated Pod on for a couple more days on TikTok. If TikTok goes away,
coming to Instagram.
Yeah, we're gonna jump on Instagram. We'll do some reels on there. Might even do that anyway. So, and then click the merchandise link in the show description. We'll be back with a reaction pod after the game at some point, hopefully following a win. Until then, be kind to yourselves, be kind to one another, and we will talk to you come post game. We love you guys. We thank you. Go Birds.
Go Birds. Go Irish.
Oh, my God, deep to right field. Way up there and way out of here.
The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you.
The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.